Hey everybody, this is Jason. This video is a time-lapse, hyperlapse video of a kitchen remodel project that I did with the help of my brother. It was a 17-day kitchen remodel, and we pretty much gutted the entire previous kitchen, including all the cabinets, the flooring, and cut into the walls and built a soffit box and a bunch of other stuff. So this video is a high-speed time-lapse. I had a GoPro camera set up and it took a shot every 2 seconds. This is sped up 10 times that, so this would be equivalent to a shot every 20 seconds. These first few shots are just before and afters of the kitchen, so you get an idea of where we started and where we're going with this project. You see a pretty significant difference. We took down some old hanging cabinets that were blocking off the view across the room to make this much more open feeling room. So here comes the time-lapse hyperlapse part of the video. It runs for about 20 minutes, I believe, and this goes through the entire project. I did upload separately 17 individual videos that are day-by-day videos at the normal time-lapse rate of one shot every 2 seconds, and those videos go into more detail and I discuss all about the challenges we ran into during this kitchen remodel and some of the things that you would probably run into if you were going to do a DIY remodel yourself. But this video is a much faster one, just to give an overview. So you saw there we pretty much demolished all this. This is day one. We demolished all the cabinets in day one. Now we're moving on to flooring demolition here. We were using a jackhammer and a rotary hammer to break that down. This is now on to day two. The first project of this day was to build a soffit box up at the top here. We took out this old hanging section of cabinets that blocked off the view of the room. So I wanted to put an island range hood in the center of the room, and I decided to build this soffit box in the center of the ceiling that will house an island range hood hanging down, and also a couple of lights. We didn't have a lot of lighting in the kitchen before, so I wanted to add some lights in here. So here we are building the soffit box in the ceiling. In addition, off to the right, I've been working on some electric projects. My plan is to put an LCD TV on the wall off to the right here. So I've been running some HDMI cables and electrical and Ethernet for that. So this is the end of day three. And we are just preparing the floor right now so we can start putting down some level quick. Level quick is a self-leveling agent that you can put down on the floor before tiling. It creates a nice smooth surface, smooth even surface for tiling, and fills in any cracks. So there you saw we just poured all the level quick. So now we're on to the next day here. This day we are continuing working on the soffit box and electrical up top. Here you see me going up and down the ladder, just hooking up some electrical for these recessed lights up here. I set up all these on dimmer switches. The previous day off to the right, I set up the switches and the electrical for this section. Off to the left here, this is where the sink and everything goes, the sink and the main section of cabinets. So here we've moved on. Okay, so we're doing the layout now for the kitchen tiling. We decided to go with a 45-degree pattern for the floor tiles. Just to mix it up, since everything else is going to be perpendicular or parallel to the wall. We wanted to have the tiles at an angle. So we picked these inexpensive 12 by 12 tiles from Home Depot. This whole kitchen remodel project, we're basically doing it on the cheap. We didn't have a big budget to do this, so we were going obviously DIY and trying to keep costs down with the supplies that we picked. So I think these tiles were about $1 each or something. They're standard off-the-shelf Home Depot ones, but we like the look of them. They have a really nice sort of stone look to them. We got about half the floor tiled the previous day. My brother Neil, who's in the white shirt, zooming around here, did most of that tiling there. Here we are cutting open this wall here. So before we had this really teeny doorway going between the dining room and kitchen. And so we cut it open to both vertically and horizontally to make it more of an open concept space between the dining room and the kitchen. So you see we've got that all cut open. The only concerns we had with that were we have to rewire some electrical, which I see I've already gotten done here in this Hyperlapse version. So now we're moving on to doing some sheetrocking on the right. We've patched up the right section here. I had two extra guys come in on a couple of these days, some guys that helped me out with a deck project I did a while back, and a couple other little things. So I've had a couple extra helpers. Here Neil is grouting the floor tile, and we got just half of this floor tile down at this point. We wanted to get this section of the floor tile done so we can move on to setting up kitchen cabinets sooner in the project. The other thing we needed to get done before starting on kitchen cabinets is getting the sheetrocking done, and the sheetrocking is an ongoing project. Anyone who's done drywall sheetrocking knows you have to do a lot of layers of mudding and sanding, and more mudding and sanding sometimes in order to get nice smooth surfaces between existing sheetrock and new sheetrock. So here I'm just going through, and with Neil's help here, we're putting insulation in the wall, which we didn't have before, and just tacking up this sheetrock here, and then putting up the initial layer of mud on there to smooth it all out. So here we're moving on to the soffit box up top, and doing the same thing up here, mudding this whole section here and getting it ready for paint. So here we are, just continuing on that project. The drywalling is my least favorite part of remodeling. I've done a couple bathrooms in the past, and it's pretty much the dirtiest part of doing remodeling. It creates this super fine, really disgusting sheetrock dust that is horrible for your lungs, and you definitely want to have a good respirator for doing drywall sanding. I actually got this vacuum attachment too for my vacuum that helps suck up some of the sheetrock dust. So here we are moving on to cabinets. The previous days we built all the cabinets outside. These are IKEA section cabinets. So again, a really cost-effective but pretty good quality system. Here we've got one wall of the cabinets up with the oven in there. That's a 24-inch double gas oven right there. And so we set all that up. These cabinets are 90 inches tall, plus there's 4.5-inch feet underneath them, so it's 94.5 inches tall is the height of this. It's a little higher than we previously had. I figured I'd go ahead and take advantage of the vertical space we have in the room and build them up a little higher. So here we are. I'm just making measurements and putting some framing up for the upper cabinets on this other wall. And here's Neil continuing on with the tiling. Neil's a part-time tiling contractor. He used to do it full-time, but still does it part-time. And he was gracious enough to come down and help me out on not just the tiling of this project, but the entire project. And he was a huge help, and really took the lead on all of this tiling and later on the countertop stuff. So here I'm getting the upper cabinets all put up. The IKEA section system works on a set of hanging brackets that you saw up on the wall. Here you can see them again, these metal brackets. So they get screwed into the studs in the wall, and where there's not enough studs, we used some heavy-duty drywall anchors. So I've got all the brackets up there and set for the upper cabinets. This day, now we're around day 7 or 8. I'm not really sure here, but I had these 2 extra helpers come in, and I actually had ran out of other stuff for them to work on, so I had them go ahead and get started on painting the room. I picked out this sort of grayish top color paint, and so I had them get started. I was originally going to paint as the final step of the remodel, but we had them for some extra time, so had them get started on that. In the lower right here you see me and Ernie, one of the guys who I had come on to help out, working on putting these lower cabinets together and getting the plumbing and gas connections hooked up here. So Ernie's also a part-time plumber, so he was able to help with getting the gas line all set. So here we're on another next day morning, and I'm just continuing on with the drywall sheetrocking. Again, this is a multi-part process of mudding, sanding, mudding, and sanding to get a good surface. Here Neil is continuing on grouting the floor. So the previous day he'd gotten the rest of the kitchen floor tiling set down, and so now he's just doing the rest of the grouting, and we just have to wait for that to be done to continue on with these base cabinets. So I designed this base cabinet area to have this very large center peninsula come out here, and it has a bar overhang that goes across here, which you'll see in just a second how the bar works. But we really added a whole bunch of usable space in the cabinets. Before, we had some old cruddy cabinets, and there was never enough space for all the pots and pans and all that stuff. So in designing this, IKEA has a great modular system for cabinets. You can basically put together your kitchen however you want. So here I have the cabinets all blocked out on the base area, and here just continuing another round of drywall sanding. I had also done some I got a texture gun and did some texturing on the walls to match the existing texture after doing the drywall. So here you can see the back side of this cabinet has an inset area. It's inset 9 inches, and now that we've got this plywood top on, we're going to be putting some 12 by 12 inch counter tiles on top of this. So the plywood top is on there, and it overhangs this inset section of cabinets on this back side that you see here. So there's actually a 9-inch bar overhang. We have some stools already, 3 stools that fit right under there, and so it creates a nice section for guests, or for us, or my little daughter loves to sit up here now that everything's finished. It's a nice area to hang out in the kitchen and chat with whoever's cooking food. So we have a lot more counter space too. That was another thing. We never had enough counter space to cook a large meal. We were always bumping into each other before. So here I'm just working on some of the innards of the cabinets, getting some of these sliding drawers in. The IKEA section system has some great hardware. It's all developed by a company called Blum, I believe it is. They're like a German hardware company. So they're all really high quality hinges and sliders. And that was one of the reasons why we decided to go with the IKEA system over some of the other inexpensive cabinet options out there. I would definitely recommend the IKEA section system. It's their newer line of cabinets that came out in early 2015, I believe it is. The only downside is their instruction manuals leave some details out. There's not a lot of English instructions, so you have to really pay attention. So here we are putting down this lattice, this metal like chicken wire lattice on top. This is in preparation for putting down mortar. And here you see Neil is putting in mortar on the top of this plywood section with this tar paper, and then the chicken wire lattice underneath. So he puts down this first layer of mortar that's dry, and then comes in and adds some moisture to it to really help it cure and set. And this mortar bed is what the tiles will be set on. Here you see Neil cutting out for the kitchen sink area, and we're setting that in with some construction adhesive. So here we move on, just doing a little painting there, and Neil is working on laying out the tiles. The way I designed this whole section is so that exactly 4 12 by 12 tiles would go across this cabinet or this base cabinet area. And so we didn't have to do a ton of cuts, although Neil has to do some trick cuts and cut around the sink. So here I'm just working on doing some trimming around this new wider section. We had this old swinging saloon door when we first moved in. It was ridiculous. So after we opened that up horizontally and vertically, I just needed to trim it out. Here I was just doing some baseboard installation. So here Neil is cutting out. He made his custom jig for the sink inset, and he did some custom beveling on these granite tiles. And it took a couple hours, but it turned out great. It was a really nice bevel edge. So here we're working on just getting the upper cabinets all finalized, and I had some electrical work here. I wanted to add a GFCI electrical box at the end of the cabinets, And then also I'm preparing for some in-cabinet lighting. So each of these upper cabinets have glass front doors, and each of the cabinets have a light inside of them too. It's the IKEA Omlop lighting system. So here Neil is setting down the 12-inch kitchen counter tiles, and he's using a special type of thin set for granite and marble, and it just attaches right on to the top of the mortar bed that he laid down the day before. And so he makes quick work of this, going through and building up the countertop. He's done this many times, so he's a seasoned pro at this and gets them all really nice and level. We spent a lot of time too in the setup of all the base cabinets to make sure everything was perfectly level, even though there was a drop off of about an inch from the center of the room off to the corner. We just adjusted all the adjustable legs. So here Neil is going through and attaching on the edge rails. These 12 by 12 tiles are from a company called MSI International. I got them through Home Depot. It was a color called Blue Pearl, and the 12 by 12 tiles had these matching edge rails with this nice beveled edge. So I was really happy to find those, and it made it a lot easier to finish the edge of the countertop rather than having to do custom bullnosing and beveling all the way around. So here I'm continuing on some finishing work on the large opening that we cut open. And now Neil's moving on to the backsplash. This backsplash is has a lot of medium to darker brownish and gray tones. It was sort of a mix between the color of the brownish cabinets on the wall and the color of the tiles, the counter tiles. So we felt it really connected the two together. And once we get the lighting in at the end, it really lights up the backsplash and it looks really nice. So this little drop-down area, we had to do this drop-down cabinet because there was a existing window that we didn't want to have to remove or change the area around here. But I had a plan to put a wine fridge down in this drop-down area. So where you see on the bottom left there, a wine fridge goes in there, and we just put some plants and other kitchen gadgets up on top. So here we've dropped in the gas range, the gas stove top. And here we're moving on the next day to cutting the holes. Neil's working on cutting holes through for the kitchen faucet and a soap pump and a reverse osmosis water system that we had before that we're still using. So here I'm just working on electrical in the wall and for the TV on the wall. And here working on electrical for the island range hood. And here Neil and I are just putting up the island range hood and testing it out. And we have power and fan and all that is good. So I was just doing some finishing work on this, putting some trim pieces up here above the island range hood. So here Neil's doing some custom bullnosing for these granite cuts that he did for the inside of the window trim, and putting the tiles on this lower drop down section. Here we've moved on. My buddy Ernie, who's a part-time plumber, he's helping out with getting the final faucet and reverse osmosis system set back up with the garbage disposal. Had him do that since he's an expert at that sort of stuff. And here Neil is going through and grouting the backsplash. And you can see some lights hanging down there. Those ones, once they get all attached, they light up this whole area and it creates a really nice look. There's some glass tiles in the backsplash that really get lit up. So here Neil's cleaning that up. And there you see the wine fridge in. Here we're almost done with the kitchen remodel. We actually remodeled 2 bathrooms in addition to this. There's one attached to the kitchen that you may have seen very briefly. Here it is actually. This is in the bathroom. So we remodeled that bathroom and one at the other end of the house during the same 17-day period. So here I'm just moving on to attaching hardware and handles onto the cabinets. I made this little just paper templates for all the different screw drill points that I'm going to need for all these different various handles. And so making the paper template, it wasn't something that was in the IKEA instructions, but I found it helped speed up the process a lot. So here I'm just going through and pre-drilling all the holes, and I can quickly go through and add all of the handles. So this the color of these cabinets, it's the IKEA section, and it's the Ed Serum wood effect brown is the color and design. So this is sort of the last day. There we see you finished it 1:49 a.m. We ran a lot of days into well past midnight. We were basically averaging, I think, about 12 hours a day, my brother Neil and I, and then we had a couple helpers on some days. So here's just some final pictures going through what the end result looks like with all the lights on, with the new range hood. You see the TV off to the left. It's an LED TV that's hooked up to the internet and one of our DirecTV boxes. Here, Maytag range that we put in. Our existing one was really cruddy and old, and this one was a nice one. Puts out a lot of heat. And yeah, so this just sort of gives you a good look at what the end result was. So yeah, if you're interested in seeing more on the day-by-day process with a lot of explanation on what all the challenges that we ran into and sort of what to expect if you're going to try to do a DIY remodel, you can check out, I have the 17 individual videos, and I'll link to them from this video as well. Those ones go through all the time lapse at about 10 times slower, with a lot more detail, and you can sort of see what's happening during it. So yeah, that's about it. This was our kitchen remodel process. Once again, I want to thank my brother Neil. Can't thank him enough for coming down and helping me out with this. It was an awesome project to work on. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed watching this high-speed hyperlapse time lapse, so I'll catch you later.